Hello everyone, very good morning. So now we'll
Hi, good morning. Hi, Vish.
just a minute. Let me share. Yeah, someone is asking something.
Yeah, Dinesh, can you cover all the admin level activities as well?
Yeah, so we are going to do that. I will show you.
At
Okay,
least
how to create user, how to
in a week,
yes,
one day you can arrange your admin level activities.
we are going to cover those things in once. Okay, don't worry about that.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So when you are working with the data masking concept, we need to create a roles and then we need to create a users and all those things. I will show you that how exactly we have to so work with the admin level activities.
Okay.
Now
Okay,
working
thanks.
resource manager also we are going to do the same thing. Okay. So we are going to cover almost all, so each and every the functionality and then each and every topic in Snowflake. So okay, so don't worry about anything. Okay, so
Okay,
now
thank you, Dinesh.
so let's start. Let me share my screen. Okay. So in the last sessions, what we have done, so just we saw that, so what are the different table types, right? So how to create a transient database or transient schema or transient table. So and then, so how to create a temporary tables. So these are the things we saw that, right? How to create. When we are creating what we observed, so any table or any database or any schema, when you are creating, if it is a transient or if it is a so permanent tables or permanent databases, for everything, retention period by default, it is one. Retention period by default, it is one. That is nothing but a time travel period. And at the same time, so when you observe, so here, if you observe, only transient table is available, but you don't have the temporary table which you have created. So why? The temporary tables will be only for session, right? Only for that particular session. After that particular session, what will happen? It will be automatically dropped. So that is the main the property of temporary tables, right? But so let's assume that, so we have, for example, when you are working with a temporary table, so let's say, so here we have a temporary table, right? So let's create a temporary table one more time. So we have a temporary table and then we have some data also in the temporary table. Let's assume that, so now we have this temporary table available here, right? So we have this temporary table. Let me refresh it. Okay, so now we have around 8 records here. So now when you have this temporary table, so once we log out and then log in, or if you change the session, so if you go to the new worksheet also, this table will be gone, right? So this table we cannot able to see that. Now, so when you are assume that you are working with this temporary table, so when initially when we created, we thought that this temporary table, so it is not required maybe for tomorrow and then after tomorrow. So maybe for the further, so implementation. So we created it as a temporary table. The end of the day, so before closing the session, you may think that, so this particular temporary table I required to, on this particular table, I need to work. So maybe in the, so next further sessions also.
Hi, excuse me. Would you be able to increase your volume a little bit because I feel it's a little low. I don't know if it's just me.
Is it for everyone?
I think now it's getting better, I think.
No, Dinesh, I'm
Can you
getting
please confirm?
properly.
Oh, okay.
I'm fine with your audio.
Okay, thank you. Can you please check from your side as well, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Priya. Yeah. Let's come to this. Okay, so what we have done previously, so we have created a so temporary table, and then so this temporary table, so what we required, so maybe so this particular temporary table maybe we required for the next further sessions also, or so maybe tomorrow also we require this temporary table. In this particular situation, what we have to do, so once you sign out and then log in, this temporary table will be gone, right? And so when you change the session also, this temporary table will be gone. Okay, that is fine. So but so when you sign out and then log in, so again, so we need to work with this temporary table. Then what is the solution for us? So we have to convert this temporary table. We need to, from this temporary table, we need to create this table as a transient table. We can create this table as a transient table. So once we create this as a transient table, then what will happen? The transient table will be available. It will not be dropped. So once you sign out and log in also, right? So let's see that. So how we can able to, so create from the temporary table, how to create a transient table. And then what is the approach we are going to follow? Generally, from one table, if you want to create another table, what we will do? So for example, so let's say create table, right? Create table name, for example, new table name, new as, so select star from, so emp. So we'll do this practice, right? Create table name. So this is the table name. Let's assume that new is a table name. So as select star from table. So what will happen? Whatever the table structure and then data, it is available in this particular table, it will be created as a new table, right? So let's say, for example, here create table. So this is the table name, the new as select star from emp. If you do like this, now observe, this is semicolon. Okay, now observe this. So what will happen? The new table will be created. Now observe this. The new table is created, emp, along with that new table is created. Here also it is having 8 records. Here also it is having 8 records, right? And both the places, observe the size 2 KB, and then it is also 2 KB. Okay, so this one also 2 KB. It means the same copy of the table we created as a another table, right? But here these both are the permanent tables. Both are the permanent tables, right? So to do that, so we can create the same way. So but the best practices we are going to use, instead of create table the as, we are going to use clone option. We are going to use a clone option. Just remember this, what is the purpose of the clone? Again, we are going to discuss the, so completely about the clone topic, so how it will work in the backend, then you will understand. At this moment, just understand, clone means when we are using a clone, instead of creating like this, what will happen is, here this table also it is occupying a space, this table also occupying space, right? For example, here what we have done, we created emp. Let's assume that this is occupying 1 GB, and then we are creating another table. We are creating another new table. If it is occupying also 1 GB, then same data, right? It is occupied 2 times, right? Here also we have a one table. Here also we have a the same structure of the table and then same details. So totally it is occupying 2 GB instead of 1 GB, right? When you are using clone, what will happen is, instead of additional extra storage, it will not occupy additional extra storage. So it is going to occupy only one time. Always it will be directed to your original table from where you are cloning. From where you are cloning. So that's the concept of the clone option. So instead of 2 times occupying the same space, it is going to occupy only one time. Just remember this. Okay, so again we will discuss what exactly the clone, how to work with a clone, we will see that now. So here our requirement is, so why the clone came into the picture. So now we have to convert this, whatever the temporary table is available, this table we need to, from this temporary table we need to create a new table, transient table. So what is the intention behind this? If you sign out and then log in, this table will be gone, right? So we want to work with this table. So next session also, then we need to create the same table as a transient table. Then only the table will be available. To do that, what we have to do from, observe this, this is, so certification questions and interview question also. From temporary table, we are going to create transient table. We are going to, from temporary, we are going to trying to create transient table. So to do that, so how we can able to see, how we can able to implement that with the commands. So we'll see. So here, so converting into different table types. When you are doing that, observe this. Instead of create as command, what we are going to do is we are going to implement clone option. Observe this. Create or replace table, right? So what you have used previously as, right? Select star from EMP. It means from this particular table. So if you want to create a transient table, so from this, what you have to do? So you have to, so create a table, for example, so transient, so employees. So what is the table name here? Employees underscore temp. This is the table, right? So we can use this from this table. Now this particular temporary table, so will be so created, so transient. This is another option. Okay. So transient new. Then new table will be created as a transient table from this temporary table. But when you do this, what will happen? So both the things will occupy the storage. Instead of that, observe this, what we are doing. The same thing, create or replace the table transient table. Transient table we are creating. Transient table is, table name is emp underscore transient, and from where you are going to, from where you are trying to create, from temporary to transient, right? Temporary table to transient. So what is the temporary table here? This is the temporary table. Observe this. From temporary table, we are going to create, so I will give the same name, employees underscore transient. Observe this. We are using a keyword called clone here. We are using a keyword called clone here. Same. So this command same. This command also same. Don't get confused here. Okay. So only the thing is when you are utilize, when you are implementing by using this command, it will both the tables will occupy the storage. But here when you are implementing this command, so only the cloned table will not occupy storage. Always it will point out to the main table, so which you, from where you have created. Now observe this. So we are using create or replace transient. The table name we are giving transient table. What is the table name? This is the table name. And then clone from clone, so we are using from, this is a temporary table. Now what will happen? The same data whatever is available in the temporary table, it will create another table called transient. Then now observe this, we are going to do this. Now what happened? Transient table is created, right? This is possible, right? Okay. So now transient table is created. Now when you refresh it, you can able to see the same data. So if you want to work, so maybe, so in then tomorrow also, you can able to work with this table, right? And then so once your so work is done, you can able to drop this. Intentionally you can able to, by using a drop command, you can drop this. And then if I sign out and then log in, this table is gone, right? Okay, fine. So now the questions is here. So what we have done, from temporary table we created a transient table, right? From temporary table we created a transient table. Now the question is it possible to create, is it possible to create from temporary table to permanent table? Observe this carefully. Previously what we have done here, temporary table, right? This is a temporary table. From this temporary table, we created transient table. This is possible. Yes, that's why I mentioned yes. Okay. Now the question is, temporary table, can you able to create permanent table? Now I have a temporary table. Can you able to create it as a permanent table? Now observe this. What we are going to do is, if you want to create a permanent table by using temporary table option, now observe this. So what is the command? Create or replace, same thing. Instead of this, so what we require? We need a permanent table, right? So permanent, I will mention here as a permanent clone. So from where you have to clone? Temporary table. This is a temporary table. We are trying to create from this particular temporary table to so permanent table. Is it possible or not? Now observe this. What is the error you are going to get? See this one. Temporary table cannot be cloned to a permanent table. Clone to transient table instead. What we have done previously. So cloned to transient table instead. It means because the reason behind this is not possible. Right? This is not possible. The reason behind this is always permanent table. What we will have? Permanent tables will have fail-safe period. Fail-safe period. That's why, so when you are trying to create a temporary table directly to the permanent table, it will not allow us. It will not allow us. The same way, if you try to create from transient to temporary also, it will not allow you. It means you have a transient table. From transient table, you are trying to create permanent table. This is also not possible. So anything temporary to permanent or transient to permanent, not possible. Remember this, not possible. But permanent to transient, permanent to temporary, that is possible. So we'll see that also. Now what we are doing, observe this. We are trying to create new table or so permanent table from transient table. This is a permanent table. So what is the transient table we are having here? Employees underscore transient. This is our transient table, right? This is our transient table. Now observe this. We are trying to create the permanent table. So from cloning from transient table. Now observe this. This is also, it will not be possible. See this one. Let me do one more time properly. See this one. What is the syntax? Transient object cannot be cloned to the permanent object, right? So because of the failsafe, permanent will have a failsafe. That's why it will not allow you to create. So anything from the transient to permanent, from transient to permanent, temporary to permanent, it is not possible. Here what we have done, temporary to transient we have done. So temporary to permanent also not possible. So temporary to, so this one temporary to transient, it is possible. Now, for example, we have a permanent table. Permanent table. Permanent table to transient. Is it possible or not? At the same time, permanent to temporary. Temporary. Is it possible or not? Just for the, so these are the different options what we can able to perform. Okay, since certification these things they will ask, so one time so they will ask this particular question temporary to transient, and another so set they will ask this question, another set they will ask this question. Okay, so just observe this, just try to practice, and then so don't get confused here. Now what we are doing, so blindly you can remember to permanent, it is not possible. From the permanent to transient, permanent to temporary, that is possible. This is possible. This is possible. This is also possible. So what is not possible? Only you are converting temporary to permanent. transient to permanent, it is not possible. Remaining is possible. The reason behind this is because of the fail safe, because of fail safe option. So directly you cannot able to so clone this. So from the temporary to permanent, transient to permanent. Now permanent table, already we have a permanent table. From this, so we are trying to create a new table called transient. This is possible. Now let's copy this. So what is this? Permanent table. So we have a permanent table name. So let's take, so EMP is a permanent table for us here, right? Let's take EMP table. EMP table is a permanent table, and ancient, ancient table, EMP, EMP transient. Now observe this is our permanent table, EMP. We have what we have here. EMP is a permanent table. From the EMP table, we are trying to create transient table. Try to create transient table. So this is possible. See this one. This is possible. Okay, just this is just we are doing this for the just for the so certification question. So practice. Okay. So but generally, so once we have this, so we'll again, so already we have a permanent table. Again, we will not create a so transient. It is not required basically. Right now, permanent to temporary. So this one, so maybe if you want to do any this one, so if you want to do any like for example any R&D on this particular table, then we will do that. Create or replace. So this is temporary. Instead of temporary, temporary table will use. Now observe this. This is possible. So this is the permanent table. From the permanent table, we are creating a temporary table. So temporary table name is emp underscore temp. When you do this, instead of doing the changes on your original table, so you are going to do the implement the changes on this particular thing. So after your session, so it will be gone. So now observe this. You may have, so now here, so emp temp table, emp transient table, right? So we have available all the temporary tables is available. Now when you log out and then log in, what will happen? So let's observe this. So again we will try to log in. When you observe this, all your temporary tables will be gone. So now let's come to the account admin. Now observe this one. So all the temporary tables is gone. So whatever the temporary table previously we have, that details we have created as a transient table. Now the same data it is available here. You can able to so work with this particular table, right? So this is how we can able to do. So this like from one table type we can able to create another table type. Okay, these are the things. So only the thing. So you can remember one thing, when temporary to permanent not possible, transient to permanent it is not possible, remaining everything the possible. Okay, so you can remember very easily these things. Now what is the retention time for all these tables, for all the database whatever we have created, for all the schema whatever we have created? Retention time is by default it is 1, right? By default it is 1. Now for the permanent tables, what is the retention time travel period? Maximum we can give up to, remember this, maximum default is 1 day. Default is 1 day. Only for the permanent table, maximum is 90 days, 90 days of the time travel. So for the permanent tables, along with this 90 days, you will have 7 days of fail safe period will be available. And one more thing, when it is coming to the fail safe, remember this fail safe will not be done by any Snowflake user. No need to do any extra settings also. if it is a permanent table, by default, failsafe will be activated. Failsafe will be activated. That's why if you observe here in the account and then average storage used, see this one here, you can able to see the failsafe. So whatever the tables we have created, we didn't done any failsafe. We didn't activated any failsafe, right? By default, these things is available. By default, failsafe will be available. So now let's see. So how to create the retention time and how we can able to implement the retention time and minimum retention is 0 days. We can do that. Minimum will be 0 days. Default will be 1 day. Maximum will be 90 days. This especially this is for the only for the permanent tables. For the transient and then temporary, default will be one. Default will be one. For so permanent table also default will be one. But for the temporary and then transient, this so maximum also it will be one only. We cannot able to so go more than so beyond so 1 day. Okay, let's see that how to create a retention period here. So in this particular section, now let's come to that here. So retention period. So before that, so when you come to, okay, so just observe this fail safe option. So what they are going to tell. So these are the fail safe option, and then how we can able to go to the time travel. So here, so by time travel allowed, so by using so 90, so just only observe this particular thing. So 1 to 90 days, 1 to 90 days. This is for permanent table. Whatever the changes we are going to do, whatever the DML changes, operations we are going to perform on the table. So if you want to go back and then check, so what exactly what we have done and any specific time shot or snapshot, so we can able to go back and then you can check by using before statement or by using a timestamp statement. And when it is coming to see this one, this is for 1 to 90 days. But when it is coming to fail safe, see this is only applicable for permanent 7 days, right? And then transient, so 0 days. Fail safe will not be available for transient. One more thing, if you observe, see this, no user operations allowed, right? Data recoverable only by Snowflake team, Snowflake support team. As a Snowflake user, we cannot able to do anything on the failsafe. That's why they mention that no user operations allowed on a failsafe. Now the same thing, see this one. So this is very important. So for certification questions, the Snowflake fail-safe storage is non-configurable. Non-configurable means, so as a user, we cannot configure anything. 7 days retention for historical data. So this is after time travel expiration. It means, so you have given, for example, so you have given 90 days or 50 days or 30 days. After the time travel expiration, extra 7 days will be available. For example, so for the permanent table, by default, it is a 1 day, right? So after 1 day, so for example, so I created a table. We have created this particular table. Let's assume that yesterday, right? So today you can go back to 1 day before and then you can check. So how the table looks like. So yesterday, okay. But if you want to see beyond that, then you have to go for fail safe. You have to go for fail safe. That is from the support team. So 7 days after the time travel expiration, 7 more days will be available for historical purpose. Okay. And another thing. So this one is, so this we discuss only accessible by Snowflake. So personals. It means Snowflake support team only can able to do that. As a Snowflake user, you cannot do anything. See this, admin can view fail safe. That's it, using Snowflake this one. So we saw that, right? So as a admin, so we can go on then to the account and then you can able to see the fail safe option. We can able to see the fail safe option here, the usage, but we cannot able to perform anything. We cannot able to perform anything. That is the statement they have given here. So this is not anyway, the fail safe is not supported for transient tables and permanent tables. Okay, this is about failsafe. Now let's come and then create the different retention times, different retention time for the different tables. So when you are coming to, okay, it can be, okay, before that, for example, so in the last session what we have discussed, if the database is permanent, your schema also permanent. Whatever the schema you are going to create within the database, if you don't specify anything, it will be a permanent schema. And if you create any table within this, if you don't specify anything, it will be a permanent table. It will be a permanent table, right? The same way, for example, if you have given some time travel, so retention period for any schema, whatever the retention period you have given, the same retention period will be applicable for the tables. It will inherit the retention period from schema. Schema will inherit the retention period from the database. Understand, right? So the same way, so we can so create the retention periods also. No need to mention separately the retention periods. Okay. So now, so if you want to separately change the retention period, then that is possible. You can able to change for any specific tables. Let's see that how we can able to change the retention periods here. Now, if you observe, okay. So when we are creating this release, we are creating a table, and so this is the structure. Generally, if you want to create a table up to till here, we will do that, right? When you create till here, what will happen? By default, retention period will be 1. If you create a table name, so column names and data types, right? By default, it will be 1. But here, what you are doing, data retention time in days, we are mentioning 90 days. Observe this, what we are doing, we are mentioning data retention time in days as 90, right? When you mention this, see this one, retention time period will be 90. Now the table is created. If you see that, for example, show tables, what it will give, it will give you the details about that particular table, right? So let's, based on created, so what is the table we have created? Employees. Now observe the retention time here, retention time index. See this one, retention time index is 1. Specifically, we have mentioned here data retention time index. Previously, for the other tables, whatever we have created previously, those tables, so by default it is a, so 1, right? By default it is 1. The here, but so we have mentioned 90 days, 90 days of the retention time. And then what is the table here? Table is kind. Observe this. So this is a table. If it is a transient, it will mention this is a transient table. Or if it is permanent, so then so it will mention, so just it is a table. If it is a transient, then only it will mention it is a transient. If it is a temporary, then it will mention here the table kind as a temporary here. Okay. So now we logged out and then log in. So there is no any temporary tables. Okay. So now we have created a table with the data retention time 90 days, right? Suppose if you try to create the data retention time for this particular table, so maybe we will create another table. So for example, let's assume that 96 days. Now just observe what will happen if I try to do this. Sorry. So I am trying to give, so 96 days here. When you observe this, see this one. What is the reason of the failure? Exceeded maximum allowed retention time. It means we cannot able to give the retention period, data retention period, so more than 90 days. The maximum is 90 days. By default is 1 day. Minimum is 0. You can give 0. So by default, if you don't give anything, by default it will be 1. Okay. Now this is the this is for permanent tables, right? This is for permanent tables. Now, so let's see. So for example, okay, we will create, so this, so that, okay, let's observe this. We will create a schema and then we will try to so create a table and then we will try to so do the changes. For example, now this is within this database, within this schema we are doing. So now let's create a schema. Now we are creating a new schema. Observe this. We are creating new schema called retention. And when we are creating a new schema, what we are doing? Data retention time in days, we are giving 90 days. Observe this. By default, we are giving 90 days. When you give data retention time 90 days, what will happen? So when you observe show schema, so already it's selected. Show schemas. You may see the retention schema also here. Yeah, we have a schema, right? Show schemas. So here, so retention schema. Now observe this. The schema is 90 days retention period, right? 90 days retention period for this particular schema. Okay. Now, if you create any table under this particular schema, now which schema it is selected? This particular table, this particular database, this particular schema is selected. Now, if you create any table under this schema, what will happen? So do you need to specify data retention time in days? Not required. If you want to specifically mention, then for example, 30 days or 20 days or whatever it may be, you can mention. Otherwise, if you don't mention, what will happen? So by default, will be one, right? But if you observe here, so the schema retention time in days is 90. But when you come to the table creation, we have created a table where we created a table within this retention schema. Observe carefully. When you do this, now when you observe the retention schema, the table is available. Now within this schema, if you observe the tables, if you observe the retention period for these tables, show tables here. Now observe this. It should be 90. It should be 90. So what is the reason behind that? So behind the reason is, so this, the schema retention is 90 days. See this one, which schema it is? Retention. The schema retention we have given as a 90 days, right? That's why whatever the table we are going to create under this schema, by default it will be 90 days. By default it will be 90 days. Suppose, so maybe, so later you have so observed, so or understand, so after some so days, so this particular so schema, whatever the tables we are creating, for these tables no need to maintain these many so retention days. It is not required basically, so we are not utilizing this. Then what we can do, you can change the retention time in days for this schema. Once you change this retention time for this schema, what will happen is, whatever the tables available in this particular retention schema, everything will be changed. So now, so this particular table we have 90 days, right? So now let's say, so let's change this retention time in days for this particular schema here. So for that, we will do is, we will change it, alter schema. Although this, what we are doing, we are trying to change. So this is the retention, right? So alter schema, retention, set, data retention time in days. What we are doing, instead of 90 days, so we don't want 90 days, so I want only 30 days. We are changing it to 30 days. Then what will happen? Whatever is available in this particular retention schema, the same so number of retention days will be applicable for those objects. Now observe this one, what we have done. So we have changed to 30 days here. Following me, right, everyone? So now observe this. So the table, so retention time, if you observe the table retention time, schema retention time is, let me show you. It has changed to 30 days here, right? Now observe within the schema, the tables retention time, but we didn't done any changes for the table because it will inherit the property from this particular table. If you observe, it will inherit the property from the schema. See this one, it has changed to 30 days, right? So one more thing, so we have to remember when you are doing this alter like a data retention time in days, we have to be very careful. So everything will be changed, the data retention time will be changed. If you modify it to the schema, everything will be changed to within the schema, whatever the tables we are using, right? So that one thing, so we have to be careful. So now, so another thing, okay, this thing is done. So now if you want to, for example, so clone historical object from the object. Now, so let's observe this. So how we can able to clone it, how we can able to go to the time travel option. So let's create a table here, and then we will insert some data into the table. Let's come here, not this one. Okay, now we have a table already. In retention schema, employees new, this is the table, right? Now observe this, what we are doing, we are trying to insert some data into this table. When the table is created, this table is created, you can see the date and time here, right? You can see the date and time here. Now, so we are inserting the data into this particular table now. Now when you inserted the data, you can able to see 8 records is available. Refresh it. Now you can able to see 8 records is available, right? Now we have all the records. Now what I will do is, I will do some changes. Let's assume that on this particular table, let's say we have done some changes maybe. So after some time, maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So for example, let me delete some records from this particular table. Delete to see the time travel, we are doing this. Delete from, what is the table name? This is the table name. From table name, where, let's check the data here. What is the data we have? Employee ID we have, manager ID we have. So let's delete, so any one thing from here. So let's, so take the manager ID. Manager ID equal to 1, I will delete. Manager ID equal to 1. Now when you run this, what will happen? It is going to delete. So from this particular table, this manager ID equal to 1, right? What is the records initially? We have 8 records. This is the initial records, right? When we have loaded. Now let's run this. Sorry, this particular thing. Now it has been deleted. Now one record has been deleted. Now if you observe the data in this table, how many records we have? So now we have how many? So refresh it. So you can able to see 7 records here, right? Because one record has been deleted. One record has been deleted, that is a manager ID equal to 1. Okay. Now let's come to the time travel. Now I want to check when the table created, how the table looks like. How the table looks like. So what is the retention time in days we have given? We have given around, so 30 days, I think. So maximum, right? Okay, let it be. So if it is one day, it doesn't matter, right? Within the, so within, so 10, so for 5 to 10 minutes we are doing. Okay, anyway, by default, one day will be available. Now, I want to see, so what is the actual data when the table is created? Or I want to see that, so how, when the table is created, how the structure looks like. Okay, after that, so before this particular statement, how the table looks like. So now generally, so when you see the data here, you can able to see 7 records. So now we know that, so this particular transaction is done, delete is done, this particular insert is done. Now we know that 8 records are inserted, after that 1 record has been deleted. Suppose any new person came and then they want to check so how the data looks like. So before 1 hour before, how the data looks like 5 minutes before, how the data looks like before this particular transaction is done. Then we can able to use time travel option. You can able to use time travel option. So by using, so three options we have. So by using, one is by using a job id, or we can call it as a query id. Query id, it means before the query id, before executing this query id, how the table looks like, or before executing this query id, how the table looks like. That is the one option. Another option is before timestamp. Timestamp. Timestamp means here you can give any specific date and then any specific time. Before that time, how the table looks like before this particular time. For example, this table is created at this particular time, right? You can see the creation date. So before that, how the table looks like means the time travel will not be available. So because the table itself, it is created at this particular time, right? So you can tell, so before this particular time, so any specific time when we have inserted, right? Before this particular time, you can see before inserting the data, how the table looks like, before deleting the statement, how the table looks like. We can do that. So this is a timestamp. We can use a timestamp. We can use a job ID or query ID. And then another option is we can do offset. We can give offset time. Offset means this is also the same timing only, but when you want to give like 2 minutes before, 3 minutes before, or 5 minutes before, you can able to implement this offset time based on the requirement. If you want to time travel based on the days, number of days, you can by using timestamp you can use. If you know the query ID, you want to check the data before the query ID execution, you can able to check the query id, or you can able to check 2 minutes before or 5 minutes before, you can able to do that. Now let's see, so all these options how we can able to implement. Now before that, so what is the timestamp here? Let me show. So timestamp, sorry, not this one. First let's select the current timestamp here. To select the current timestamp, this is the option, select current timestamp. Now what is the timestamp here? This is the timestamp. Now observe this. This is the timestamp. Let's convert this timestamp. Can use this. Let me copy this. Current timestamp is this one. Okay. Now our requirement is, for example, so 5 minutes before, right? So then I can give here, so 15, right? So then, so it will tell you, so at that particular time, how the data looks like in this particular table. To do that, so what we have to do is we can execute this command, how the table looks like before that. So you can create a restore table, or you can able to, so check the table. So let me just a minute. So instead of cloning, we can use this particular thing. If you want to change the timestamp in UTC, you can use this. It's up to us. You can use the current timestamp, or if you want to change that in a UTC, and then you can check, you can convert it UTC. And then again, if you check the timestamp here, previously the timestamp is this one, right? So once you convert into UTC, now observe this, the timestamp is, so looks like this. And this is a UTC timestamp. Now, okay. For example, so our requirement is, so before this particular thing, how the table looks like. The cloning, we will see that. So cloning means nothing but a same option. If you want to recreate the table, we can do that. So, but here, our requirement is, now observe this. So just wanted to see the data before this. Now we'll use the timestamp here. Now Now what is the table we have here? The table name I will give there. This is the timestamp. The table name is employees new. This is the table, right? This is the table. Now our requirement is just we wanted to see the data. So before this particular timestamp, let's give, so 5 minutes before I will give, for example, 20, right? Now observe this, just a 4 minutes before I am giving. Now when you run this command, what we are trying to get this from this command, select star from this particular table before, observe this, before, this is the syntax, timestamp, and then we are giving a timestamp format. When you are giving this, see this, what you can able to see, 7 records, right? 7 records. Okay. So now let's change, for example, 19. 19. Now observe, 7 records, still 7 records, right? Let's go back to 17. Now observe this, what you can able to see, 8 records we have here. We have 8 records, right? So what it mean by that? Okay. So for example, so 2 minutes before, 10 minutes before. Now observe this, whether the table is created at that time. See this one, beyond the time travel option, beyond the requested time, right? The table itself does not created at that particular time. See this one, time travel date is not available for the table, right? Because the table itself is not created. Now let's check when the table is created. Now observe this, at this particular time the table is created, right? See this one, the table structure is available, but you can able to see, so what is happening on this table, you can able to trace it back if you want to check. So for example, this is only for 5 minutes we are doing, right? You can able to do this for, so based on data retention time, based on data retention time, you can go back to n number of days. For example, 30 days means you can go back to from the table creation date to 30 days, next 30 days you can, in the final day you can able to see all the, so next, so back 30 days of the transaction, each and every day or any specific time period you can able to see, so how the data looks like at that particular moment. So now this is the thing, right? Now for example, I want to see exactly how the table looks like. So once the data is inserted, right? Let's change, we have done around 19. Now observe this one, 7 records, right? So when we have inserted the data, we have 8 records, right? We have 8 records. Now suppose I will delete some more records here. For example, the manager ID, I will take it as a 2, right? See this one, I have deleted 2 more records, and I will use some update here. For example, update table, right? For example, set salary. What is the column we have? Salary. Set salary equal to, for example, where manager ID equal to 2. Okay. What I am doing, I am updating some records. Okay, so it's not updated any records. Manager ID 2, or let's give manager ID. So 2 is not available, 5 is available, 9 is available, manager ID 5. Now when you give that, see this one, 2 number of records updated, 2 records. Now after the insert, after the deleted these records, after the update, you can able to see the final data in your table, right? This is the 5 records after all the changes. See this one, the salary has been updated, and then 2 records has been deleted. So totally initially we have 5 records, 3 total records has been deleted. After that we have done some update also, right? Now our requirement is, so we want to go back and then we want to check the, when the table created, how the table looks like exactly before all this transaction, right? Then we will use this time travel. This is one option of timestamp. Another option is you can use, so before query ID, or you can use the offset. So it's very simple. So when you want to use that offset, see this one, offset means it will give you that minutes. So this is a, so seconds. So for example, so if you want to go back 5 minutes before, so what is the table name? This is the table name, right? Select star from table name, add offset. Now observe this one, offset. We are using at offset 5 minutes or minus 60 seconds into 5. So now observe this one, how the table looks like, 7 records. Now for example, 6 minutes before, 7 records, this before, records, 9. Let's give 10. You may see 8 records somewhere, right? Observe this one, 8 records, right? 8 records in your original table when we have inserted. Now for example, so this one, so you can go back to that. So for example, if it is 5 minutes or 10 minutes within the day, you can by using this particular thing. Or if you want to go back to, for example, any specific day, you can use this timestamp. You can use this before timestamp.
Dinesh,
So for
what is that
example,
60, Dinesh?
which
13
one?
minutes minus 60.
6 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So let's say, for example, before query ID, any query ID, it means query ID means, for example, before doing this update, how the data looks like in my table, I want to see. Then what is the option? We have an option called before query ID. You need to know this query ID when you executed this particular the statement, update statement. How you will get this query ID update statement for this query ID? You can go here in the open history, you can check the so query ID for that particular update statement, or what you can do is you can go to history. So one thing remember, so this particular history tab, right, it is available only 14 days of your log information, not more than 14 days. Remember this one. Okay. Now let's check the query ID for that. So what is the query ID we have implemented for the update statement? So here somewhere, now observe this, this is the statement, right? Update employees new set salary equal to, so this one where manager equity equal to 5, right? Before this query ID, we want to see how the data looks like in the table. That is our intention. Now, if you want to see that, let's copy the query ID here. Now we are copying the query ID. Now let's execute the statement for the by using the query ID. Now observe this. Before statement, we will give this particular option. What we are going to do, just select this table here and just try to implement this. Now observe this one. So what we have given here, so before the statement, so this is a job ID or query ID. We will call it as a job ID or query ID. Don't get confused. Before this query ID, how the table looks like. Now observe this. Update, sorry, the table name is different here. Let's take the table. Observe this. The table, how the table looks like before this query ID. See this one. So update statement before update. So this is I think after update, right? No. So before update only. See the salaries, right? So before that update statement, so how the table looks like. So these are the salaries. So what we have done, manager ID 5. So we have updated with so all the 9s, right? The salaries. So like this, we can able to go back and then you can check. So what is the data before this? For example, okay. So we can check and then I want to compare the, for example, this happens after like a 5 days, we have done some changes. Maybe every day they are doing some changes on this particular table. I need to compare the initial day records the query, so table created day, and then when we have inserted some data on the initial day, and then after that the now current day. After 5 days, let's assume that, so this particular every day you are doing some changes for inserting, updating, or deleting, whatever it may be. You want to compare the initial table, so how the table looks like, the original table, after the changes, how the table looks like. You want to compare both the tables. Then what you can do is you can clone the table by using the same statement. You can clone it and then you can create a new table. Now if you observe, this is your final table, right, after all the changes. Now, so I want the table, so before this particular timestamp, you can create another table and then you can compare both the things. So that's, so we will see that in the, so next session, how to compare that. And at the same time, one more property of the data retention time is, within that period, if you identify if any table is dropped, if any schema is dropped, or if any database is dropped, within the retention time in days, you can able to, so recreate it. You can able to undrop it. Nothing but once it is dropped, you can able to get it back. You can able to get it back within the retention time in days. By default, for all the databases, all the schemas, all the tables, data retention time is 1, right? So within 1 day, if you observed, so the table is dropped or something is dropped, you can able to undrop it. So that also we will see that in the next session. So we will see, so both the things, how to create a clone object, and then how we can able to compare, and then how to implement a, how to get back the dropped tables, how you can able to implement a undrop things. Okay, so just, so try to practice the same thing in your, so trial account. So with this, then if you have any questions also, we will discuss again. So this is very important feature in Snowflake. So any questions here?
Dinesh, from transient to permanent
Mm,
table
mm,
and
mm.
temporary to
Okay.
so
Mm.
can we create directly? I mean, create a replace table as I mean as select star from the table.
You can do that. You can do that. That also we can do that. But only the because of the best practices we are using clone. Because when you do that, what will happen is, so here as we discussed, so this table also it will occupy some space. This table also it will occupy some space when you're using as statement, right? But
Correct,
so
correct, correct.
same data it will be occupied 2 times. The storage will be
Two
occupied.
times.
But why we are using clone means, so when the clone is a feature in our Snowflake, so we will discuss again in the next classes when we are working with, so this clone concept is there somewhere, yeah, in this one. So cloning
Mm,
option is there.
mm,
Here we will discuss, so what is the main intention of the clone, how it will be, so occupy the storage. What will happen is,
mm,
when you create a new table also by using clone, so it will not occupy extra 1 GB. Always it will direct it to the original table. It means instead of 2 GB, it will occupy only 1 GB space. That's why we are using clone.
mm. But we can create if we
We
want
can
if
do that.
we can
We
create
can
a
do it. Yeah, we can do that.
okay. Okay.
Hi, Dinesh. This is Sirisha.
Yes, Risha, tell me.
If I have to travel back
Mm,
like 14 days ago, like
mhm,
is timestamp is the only option because I cannot use a query ID because
mm,
history gets deleted after 14 days, right? Is it
mm.
timestamp only is the only option? Like if
Yeah, that is true, Sirisha, because so query IDs you cannot able to get back after the 14 days from the history. So then we have to use the timestamps. That is the only option.
so, do we
Dinesh,
have
suppose if we copy the query ID somewhere, I mean the earlier,
Mm,
so then
mm. Then
we
we can
can.
able to do that. Then we can do
Okay,
okay?
okay.
So,
it.
do we have to know the exact time to time travel, like seconds, and like if the table changes have been done some 20 days
Mm,
back, is the
If
date
you know
enough?
the date, that is more than enough. If you know the date.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Hi, Dinesh, this is Arvind.
Yeah,
So
Arvind,
we
tell me.
discussed about this scenario, right? So like a
Mm,
permanent tables. So earlier sessions, previous sessions, we have created so many permanent tables.
Correct.
But as per the permanent this
Mm,
table scenario,
mm, mm,
so the retention period is 90 days. If we
mm,
didn't
mm.
mention the retention period in the previous tables. So the
Correct.
retention period is 1 day. So after
Correct.
one next day, when we try to fetch the table, the table has to be deleted now. So why this is
No,
not
no, no.
happening here?
No. One thing. Don't get confused here, Arvind. So the whatever the retention time is, right? So here what we are doing, right? We can go back and then we are checking. So what is the DML operations? It is performed on the table, right? So that's it.
Yes.
So retention means only you can go back and then you can check. You can nothing but you can trace it back. For example, so let's assume that so your bank account will be there, your bank statement will be there. Retention means nothing but how many days you can go back and then you can check your bank statement transactions. It will be like that. You can compare with that. You can relate it. The retention is not nothing that the table will be dropped after that. So that the main intention of the so this particular the Snowflake is the warehouse concept, right? So once the table is deleted, then so it's so there is no use, right? Whatever the table we have here, whatever the
Yes.
table we have created, these all the tables, it is permanently it will be available here itself. But only the thing is, for example, if you've done any changes, you want to go back and then so maybe you have done today some changes. After the 5 days, you want to go back to today and then you want to check exactly what the table how it looks like on that particular day. That is retention time. Okay, 1 day retention time is you can check so till so yesterday. That's it.
Okay. So I bit confused by seeing that temporary tables and permanent tables.
Okay, fine. Now it's clear, right? Don't get confused.
Yeah,
Only the
yeah.
temporary table will be dropped. Permanent and transient, it will be available until you drop.
Only the difference is retention time.
Time. Only the difference is retention time and then fail safe option for the permanent.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Hi Dinesh.
Yes, okay, tell me.
Actually, we are giving 90 days of retention period. So when
Mm,
I need to increase, I mean, in
mm,
89 days completed.
mm,
So now I need
mm,
to get more days.
mm,
So is it
mm.
possible to increase retention period extra
It means,
another
okay,
90 days?
I will tell you. So it means what will happen is every time, so it is going to be 90 days. Okay, give me, so let me give you example. Here you can able to see the calendar, right? So for example, let's say today you have created on 21st. You can able to see my calendar, right? Satya?
Yes.
Yeah, I have opened the calendar. Yeah. Here, so let's assume that on 21st we created a table. Okay. The time travel you have given is, let's assume 2 days. Okay. 2 days you have given. Then what will happen? So 2 days of the time travel you can do. It means, so now assume that you are on 23rd. Okay. 22nd and 21, you can go back and then you can check how the data looks like on the 21st. Okay. Now, suppose you are on 24th. Again, what you will be there? So 2 days retention time. It means you will go and go back up to 22nd and then you can check from here. So how the data looks like. What is the changes we have done on 22nd? How the data looks like exactly on 22nd. How the data looks like exactly on 23rd. Again, if you are 25th, again you can go back and then check. So back 2 days. So every time, so when the table, for example, as you said, so for example, once the 90 days is completed, then again for back every time it will be the 90 days only.
Yeah, got it.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Dinesh, suppose like a schema level, I'm setting 90 days
Okay.
retention period. So
Mhm.
can we alter the table level?
Yeah, we can alter the table level.
We can alter 30
That is
days,
possible.
20
Yes.
days like that, right?
Yeah, that is possible. If you alter the table level retention period, then if you do some changes for the schema level also, it is not going to impact. Because you separately mentioned when you created a table, you mentioned that retention time period will be different.
Okay. So initially, if I given the schema level 90, table
Mm,
level,
mm,
after that I modified alter table
mm,
level 30 days. So then
Okay.
after again, I am modifying the schema level,
Schema level. Okay.
80
Got
days.
it.
So then what will be the table level retention?
Table level will be the same. So whatever you have created, right, it will not going to impact, because when you created a table level, you have manually specified the data retention time for the table level, right? That is not a
Yes,
default one.
yes.
We didn't pick from the schema. You have specified manually,
Okay,
right? It is going to follow the
correct,
same way.
correct. Okay, if we have not specify, so then we can modify schema
Yeah,
level. It will affect,
it will be reflected. Yeah.
reflect. Yeah, yeah. Okay, got it.
Sirisha, Dinesh here.
Yeah. Tell me, Suresh.
Yeah. When we are cloning a temporary table to create a transient table, since there is no space for the transient table, it is only pointing to the data. So once we log off and log in again, so it will have, the table will have the transient properties, right? Not the temporary properties.
Exactly. It will have the transient properties. So
Okay.
then after.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So please practice 1 or 2 times. This is very important topic. Okay. So every certification, at least we are going to get the 2 questions on this particular time travel option. Okay. And then interview questions also. Okay.
Yeah, hello,
So
Dinesh.
next session also. Yeah. 1 second. Next session also we will see about the, so this particular time travel option. So how to clone from the time travel, how to undrop from the time travel. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Ravan. Tell me.
Yeah, whenever I create a table, I set a retention time as 5 days. Maybe
Okay.
on 21st today I set retention days as 5 days, and on 24th or 25th I'll change that retention at schema level to 1 day maybe. So so can I able to check, because at the table creation it's 5 days, on 25th or 24th can I check on the previous data, or once we change that retention time, it will delete the previous data?
So, so if you are change the retention time for the table level, so then it will not be available. If you change it for the schema level, then it is available for the table level.
Okay.
It is not going to impact if you do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. See you tomorrow.